come in and let your shoulders drop. Wherever you are right now, whatever chair, whatever bed, whatever corner of the world you found yourself in tonight, you're exactly where you need to be to hear this. Because tonight isn't about fixing everything. It isn't about having the right words or the right plan or the right 5-year outline of your life. Tonight is about something much simpler than that. Something you were given before you ever learned to doubt it. Faith. Not the kind of faith that demands proof before it moves. Not the kind that only shows up when things are going well. The kind of faith that stays, even in the dark, even when the outcome is hidden, even when nothing on the outside has changed yet. You were not created to carry the weight of your life alone. You were never meant to have all the answers before you took the next step. You were made to walk by something steadier than your own understanding. So tonight, let's walk through that together, slowly, without rushing. Let every word land where it needs to land. Breathe in and let it out slow. You are safe here. There is a moment that comes to almost everyone. A moment where the noise finally quiets down enough for a question to surface. A question that sounds something like, is any of this going to work out? Is there a purpose to what I'm going through? Am I building towards something or just surviving? And in that silence, most people reach for control. They reach for a plan, a strategy, a 5-step method to force the outcome into being. There's nothing wrong with planning, nothing wrong with working hard, showing up, doing your part. But underneath all of that effort, there has to be something else holding it together, something that doesn't come from your own strength. That something is faith. Faith isn't the absence of effort. It isn't sitting back and waiting for life to arrange itself around you. Faith is what lets you keep showing up, without needing to see the whole staircase before you take the first step. Think about the difference between a person who is anxious about the future and a person who is at peace, even while working toward the same future. The circumstances might look almost identical from the outside. Same bills, same unanswered questions, same waiting, but one person is being crushed by the weight of it and the other is being carried. The difference isn't the size of the problem, it's what they're standing on. Let's talk about what faith actually is. Underneath all the noise, all the definitions, all the performance of it, faith is trust that outlasts the evidence. It's the quiet decision to believe that you are not forgotten. Even when the silence stretches longer than you wanted it to, it's choosing to believe that there is a hand steadying your life. Even on the days you can't feel it. Faith doesn't require you to understand everything. In fact, most of the time, faith is precisely what you need because you don't understand. If you could see the whole plan laid out, if you could see exactly how the pieces fit together, you wouldn't need faith at all. You just need a calendar. But life doesn't work that way. And neither does growth, neither does becoming who you were made to be. So faith becomes the bridge between what you can see and what you can't yet see, between where you are and where you're being led. And here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Faith is not a feeling you either have or don't have, like some people are born lucky with it and others aren't. Faith is a muscle. It strengthens through use. Every time you choose to trust instead of panic, every time you choose to keep going instead of giving up, every time you release your grip on something you cannot control, that muscle grows. You are not behind, you are in training. Let's talk for a moment about control. So many of us were taught, whether directly or indirectly, that safety comes from control. If you can just manage every variable, predict every outcome, prepare for every possible disappointment, then you'll be safe. Then nothing will be able to hurt you. But control was never meant to be our foundation. It's exhausting to hold. It's heavy in a way that quietly wears you down, day after day, until you don't even notice how tired you've become. You just know that peace feels far away, that rest feels like something other people get to have. Faith invites you to set some of that weight down, not because you stop caring, not because you stop working toward what matters to you, but because you stop believing that the weight of the outcome rests entirely on your shoulders. There is a difference between responsibility and control. You are responsible for your effort, your character, your integrity, the way you show up each day. But you are not responsible for engineering every outcome. You were never meant to carry that. Somewhere, something greater than you is already at work, weaving together things you cannot see, aligning timing you cannot control, preparing rooms you haven't even walked into yet. Your job is to keep showing up with an open hand, not a clenched fist. An open hand can receive. A clenched fist can only hold on to what it already has, and it will eventually get tired. Let your hands open tonight, even if it's just a little, even if it's just for these next few minutes. I want you to think back to a time in your life when you were in the middle of something hard, something that felt like it might never end, a season of waiting or loss or uncertainty. Do you remember how it felt in the middle of it? How impossible it seemed that things would ever shift? And now, look at where you are. You made it through, maybe not unscathed, maybe not without scars, but you made it through. That's not an accident. That's not just resilience you conjured up out of nowhere. Something was holding you, even in moments you didn't recognize it, even in moments you thought you were completely alone. This is what faith teaches us to recognize in hindsight, so that we can trust it in advance next time. Every season you survived is proof, not proof that life gets easy, proof that you are not carrying it by yourself, even when it feels that way. So when you find yourself in a new season of difficulty, and you will, because that is simply the nature of being alive, I want you to remember this. The same steadiness that carried you before is still available now. It didn't run out. It didn't expire. It is still here, waiting for you to lean into it. Let's talk about waiting, because waiting is one of the hardest places for faith to survive. We live in a world engineered for instant answers, instant results, instant gratification. So when life asks us to wait, when a door stays closed longer than we expected, when a prayer seems to go unanswered for months or years, it can start to feel like something is wrong, like maybe we did something wrong, like maybe we're being punished or overlooked or forgotten. But waiting is not punishment. Waiting is often preparation. Think about anything of real value in nature. Nothing meaningful grows instantly. A tree doesn't become strong overnight. Its roots have to go down before its branches can go up. And the deeper the roots, the more the tree can withstand when the storms come. If your life feels like it's in a season of waiting right now, it may not be because you're stuck. It may be because roots are forming, character is forming, strength is forming, quietly, beneath the surface, in places you cannot yet see. You don't have to enjoy the waiting to trust it. You just have to keep your hands open, keep your heart soft, and keep believing that the delay is not the same thing as denial. What is meant for you is not in danger of missing you. There's another layer to faith that doesn't get talked about enough, and that is faith in who you are, not just faith in what will happen to you. So much of our anxiety doesn't actually come from uncertainty about the future. It comes from uncertainty about ourselves. Am I enough? Am I capable? Do I deserve good things? Will I mess this up the way I've messed up other things before? Faith isn't only about trusting an unseen plan. It's about trusting that you were made with intention, that you were not a mistake, not an accident, not an afterthought, that there is something in you, some seed of purpose, placed there long before you ever had to prove yourself to anyone. You don't have to perform your way into worth. You don't have to earn the right to be loved, to be guided, to be cared for. That was already settled, long before you started trying so hard. So much of the exhaustion so many people carry comes from believing they have to prove themselves worthy of grace, worthy of peace, worthy of good things happening to them. But grace was never something you had to qualify for. It's not a reward for perfect performance. It's a gift, freely given, to people who are still very much in progress. You are allowed to be in progress. You are allowed to still be figuring things out. Faith isn't reserved for people who have it all together. In fact, faith is most necessary for people who don't. Let's slow down here for a moment and just breathe. In and out. Notice any tension you're holding, in your jaw, in your shoulders, in your chest, and let it soften, even slightly, with each breath you take. You don't have to hold everything together right now, not in this moment. This moment is simply for resting. I want to talk now about what it looks like to actually live from faith. Not just believe in it as an idea, but let it shape the way you move through your days. Living from faith looks like waking up and choosing gratitude before you check your notifications. It looks like speaking kindly to yourself, even on days you feel like you failed. It looks like doing the next right thing, even when you can't see 10 steps ahead, because you trust that clarity comes with movement, not before it. Living from faith looks like resting without guilt, understanding that rest is not laziness. Rest is trust in action. It's believing that the world will not fall apart if you take a moment to breathe, to be still, to simply exist without producing something. Living from faith looks like releasing people and situations you cannot control, not with bitterness, but with a kind of quiet release, acknowledging that you did what you could and the rest is not yours to carry. Living from faith looks like showing up for the people around you with a full heart instead of a guarded one. Because when you trust that you are held, you don't have to hoard your love or your kindness out of fear that there won't be enough left over for you. Faith changes the way you walk through an ordinary Tuesday. It changes the way you respond to disappointment. It changes the tone of your inner voice, softening it from criticism into compassion. This isn't about becoming a different person overnight. It's about small, daily choices. Choosing trust over panic, just a little more often than you did yesterday. I know that for some of you listening tonight, faith has felt distant lately. Maybe life has handed you enough disappointment that trusting anything feels risky. Maybe you've prayed for things that didn't come. Maybe you've hoped for outcomes that never arrived, at least not in the way you expected. I want to gently say this to you. Unanswered doesn't always mean unheard. Sometimes what we ask for isn't what would actually serve us. Sometimes the door that stayed closed was closed for a reason we won't understand until much later, if ever. And sometimes the timing simply hadn't arrived yet. Not because you weren't worthy, but because the pieces around you were still being arranged. It's okay to grieve what didn't happen the way you wanted. It's okay to feel disappointed. Faith doesn't ask you to pretend the pain isn't real. It asks you to keep your heart open even while it's healing. To keep believing that goodness is still possible, even after loss. You are allowed to be sad and still have faith. Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, some of the deepest faith is forged exactly there, in the space between grief and hope, where you choose again and again to keep believing. Let's talk about fear for a moment, because fear and faith cannot both hold the steering wheel at the same time. Fear tells you to grip tighter. Faith tells you to loosen your grip. Fear tells you that disaster is always one step away. Faith tells you that even if hard things come, you will not be left to face them without support. Fear shrinks your world down to only what you can control. Faith expands your world back open to possibility. You don't have to eliminate fear completely before you can act in faith. That's an unrealistic standard nobody actually meets. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward with faith even while fear is still whispering in the background. Let fear whisper if it needs to, just don't let it drive. There's a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances lining up perfectly. A peace that exists even in the middle of a mess, even in the middle of uncertainty. That peace is one of the clearest signs that faith is doing its quiet work in you. You'll know it's happening when you find yourself able to sleep at night, even with unanswered questions still sitting on the table. You'll know it's happening when a piece of bad news doesn't send you spiraling the way it used to. You'll know it's happening when you can say, out loud or just in your own heart, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I trust that it will. That sentence, I don't know how, but I trust that it will, might be one of the most powerful things you ever say to yourself. Say it again, quietly in your mind. I don't know how, but I trust that it will. Let that settle into you. And let's talk about comparison for a moment, because comparison is one of the quietest ways faith gets drained out of a life. It happens so gradually you barely notice it. You see someone else's success, someone else's relationship, someone else's home, someone else's ease, and something in you contracts. A quiet voice starts asking, why not me? Why is it happening for them and not for me? What am I doing wrong? But comparison assumes that everyone is running the same race on the same timeline, toward the same finish line. And that was never true. Your life was never meant to look like anyone else's. The timing that works for someone else's story might not be the timing that serves yours. What looks like someone else being ahead of you might actually be them walking a completely different path, one that has nothing to do with your own. Faith asks you to trust your own timeline, not to stop noticing other people's lives, but to stop measuring your worth against them. The moment you stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle, or your struggle to someone else's highlight reel, you free up an enormous amount of energy. Energy that can go toward actually living your life instead of quietly resenting it. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not being skipped over. You are simply on your own path, walking at the pace that your own growth requires. I want to talk about gratitude too, because gratitude and faith are close companions. It's hard to trust what's coming if you can't first appreciate what's already here. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It doesn't mean plastering a smile over real pain. Gratitude is simply the practice of noticing what is good, even in small amounts, even in the middle of hardship. A meal you didn't have to cook alone, a message from someone who was thinking of you, a body that, even if it's tired, still carried you through another day. When you train yourself to notice these small things, you're not ignoring the hard parts of life. You're simply refusing to let the hard parts be the only thing you see. And that shift, noticing the good even while acknowledging the hard, is exactly the posture faith asks you to hold. Try this, if you're willing. Before you close your eyes tonight, think of 3 small things from today that you're grateful for. They don't have to be big, they just have to be real. Let that be the last thing your mind touches before sleep, instead of the worry you've been carrying all day. There's something else worth naming tonight: the way faith shapes how we treat the people around us. When you trust that you are provided for, you stop needing to compete with the people beside you. You stop needing someone else to lose in order for you to feel like you're winning. You can celebrate someone else's good news without it costing you anything, because you know your own good news is still coming, on its own timeline, in its own way. Faith softens the sharp edges we sometimes carry into our relationships. It makes forgiveness more possible, because you're not carrying the exhausting job of being everyone's judge and jury. It makes generosity more natural, because you're not hoarding out of fear of scarcity. It makes patience more available, because you're not demanding that everyone move at the pace your anxiety wants them to move. None of this happens perfectly. You will still have hard days with people you love. You will still feel jealousy or impatience or hurt. But faith gives you somewhere to bring those feelings instead of somewhere to hide them. It gives you a way back to softness, even after you've been hard for a while. Let's pause again here, just for a few breaths. Feel your feet or your body wherever it's resting right now. Feel the surface beneath you, holding your weight without effort. You don't have to hold yourself up right now. Whatever you're resting on is doing that for you. In the same way, something larger than you is holding the weight of your life, even in the moments you forget to notice it. Breathe in, slowly, and out. Nothing is required of you right now except rest. I want to speak for a moment to the version of you that feels like you've started over too many times. Maybe you've begun again after a loss, after a failure, after a relationship that ended, after a version of your life that didn't survive. Starting over is not evidence that you are failing at life. Starting over is often evidence that you are still willing to try, that you haven't let disappointment convince you to stop showing up. There is no limit to how many times you're allowed to begin again. Every morning is technically a new beginning, whether it feels dramatic or not. You don't need a clean slate handed to you from outside. You are allowed to simply decide today that today is where the next chapter starts. Faith makes new beginnings possible because it refuses to let your past be the final verdict on your future. Whatever has happened up to this point in your life, however many times you've had to start over, none of that disqualifies you from what's still ahead. I want to talk about purpose for a moment, because faith and purpose are woven together more closely than most people realize. So many people spend years searching for their purpose like it's a hidden object they need to locate, as if somewhere out there is a single perfect answer, and until they find it, nothing they do really counts. But purpose rarely arrives as a lightning bolt. More often, it reveals itself slowly, through the way you show up in ordinary moments, through the things you keep returning to, the people you keep being drawn to help, the problems you can't stop thinking about solving. Faith says you don't have to have your whole purpose mapped out before you start living meaningfully. You simply have to be faithful with what's in front of you today. The next kind word, the next honest effort, the next small act of showing up for someone who needs it. Purpose tends to reveal itself to people who are already in motion, not to people waiting on the sidelines for certainty. You don't need the entire map, You just need enough light for the step you're on right now. And that's exactly what faith provides. Not floodlights illuminating the whole road ahead. Just enough light for the next step. And then the step after that. And then the one after that. If you've been feeling lost, wondering whether you're on the right path, let this be a small relief tonight. You don't have to know the whole path. You just have to keep walking the part you can see. I want to say something too about the idea of legacy, about what it means to build a life that outlasts your own worries. You may not think of yourself as someone building a legacy. That word can feel reserved for people who do enormous, visible things. But legacy is quieter than that, most of the time. It's built in the way you treat people when no one is watching. It's built in the patience you show a child or a stranger or yourself on a hard day. It's built in the small consistency of showing up again and again, even when it isn't recognized or rewarded. Faith reminds you that your life matters beyond what you can measure right now. The kindness you offer today might ripple into someone else's life in ways you never witness. The example you set by staying steady through hardship might be exactly what someone close to you needed to see, even if they never say it out loud. You don't have to do something enormous to leave something lasting behind you. You simply have to keep choosing faith over fear, patience over panic, love over bitterness, one ordinary day at a time. That accumulation, quiet as it is, becomes a legacy all on its own. Let's come back for a moment to stillness. There is a kind of stillness that isn't empty. It's full of something steady, something patient, something that doesn't need you to perform or explain or justify your worth. That stillness is available to you right now, in this exact moment, regardless of what your day looked like or what tomorrow holds. Let your breathing settle into that stillness, in and out. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to accomplish in this exact moment. Just rest. You have permission to simply be without needing to produce anything, without needing to solve anything, without needing to prove anything. This is what faith offers you again and again if you let it. Not constant certainty, not a life free of hardship, just permission to rest even in the middle of not knowing, trusting that you are held by something wider and steadier than your own understanding.
Before we move toward the close, I want to speak honestly about doubt, because doubt is not the opposite of faith. It's often part of the process of faith deepening.
Almost everyone who has ever trusted something greater than themselves has also, at some point, wrestled with doubt, wondered if any of it was real, wondered if they were just telling themselves a comforting story to get through hard nights. That wrestling doesn't disqualify you from faith. In many ways, it's proof that your faith is honest instead of performative. You don't have to silence every doubt before you're allowed to trust again. You can hold both at once, a question you can't fully answer, and a trust that continues anyway. Faith that has never been tested by doubt is often shallow. Faith that has survived doubt tends to be sturdier, quieter, less dependent on perfect certainty. So, if you've been carrying doubt alongside your faith, you are not failing. You are simply human, walking the same road that every person before you has walked, wondering the same things they wondered, and choosing, like they did, to keep trusting anyway. That choice, to keep trusting anyway, is the whole of what faith actually asks of you. Not perfect certainty, just a willingness to keep leaning, even while you question. Just a willingness to keep showing up, even without every answer in hand. I want to leave you with something practical tonight, a way to carry this faith forward into your actual, ordinary life. Each morning, before the world gets loud, take 30 seconds and simply say, I don't have to carry this alone today. Let that be your starting point, instead of the anxious scroll, instead of the mental list of everything that could go wrong. Each evening, before you close your eyes, take another 30 seconds and say, today is finished. I did what I could. The rest is not mine to hold. Let that be your way of setting the day down instead of carrying it into your sleep, into your dreams, into tomorrow. These small moments, repeated daily, are how faith becomes less of an idea and more of a home you actually live in. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough to start living differently. You just need to begin. Today, right where you are. As we come to the end of this time together, I want you to know something clearly. You are not behind in your life. You are not failing simply because things haven't unfolded the way you imagined. You are exactly where you need to be to keep growing into who you're becoming. Faith is all you need, not because effort doesn't matter, not because you should stop showing up and working and trying, but because underneath all of that effort, faith is the foundation that keeps you steady. It's what lets you rest even while you work. It's what lets you hope even while you wait. It's what lets you stay soft in a world that often tries to make you hard. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let your hands stay open. Let your questions stay unanswered. For now, without panic. Let yourself trust that you are held by something steadier than your own understanding. You are not alone in this. You never were. If tonight's words found you at the right moment, if something in here settled a part of you that's been unsettled for a while, let it stay with you past this moment. Come back to it whenever you need it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it too. That's often how these words find the people who need them most, one person passing it along to another. Rest now. You are held. You are loved. And faith, quiet, steady, patient faith, is enough to carry you through whatever comes next. Good night.